Hey guys, this is Maylani Hawk with Why Not Me Academy. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we have Robyn Gobbel on. I really enjoyed talking to Robyn. She is a psychotherapist who works with kids that have been through a traumatic incident. And on this episode, I ask her about how we can teach our kids about what's going on with coronavirus and what we all, everyone, kids or not, should be learning as we go through this and how to treat our minds and how to process what's going on. But we also talk about Robyn's story of how she had built up a very successful therapy group practice. And then one day she just decided, I don't want to die living here. I don't want to die doing this. I feel like I can help more people and there's a different way I can do that. And how she changed the mindset of going in to switch her hours in for dollars and how she switched over to how can I do this to make it a more passive stream of income, but also to help more people. So stick around and listen to Robyn's story because it's a great episode. Thanks. Hey guys, welcome to Why Not Me Academy. This is Maylani Hawk, and today I have Robyn on with us. Thanks for being here, Robyn.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So I was excited because Robyn is actually a psychotherapist turned speaker, and she has some really deep stuff to talk about, which all I feel like ties into the theme of this podcast, which is, of course, why not me? Why not me to live the life that I feel like I have the potential to live, and to stop just talking about things, stop dreaming about things, and actually start doing them. So Robyn, let's start off. Give us a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. So I've been, like you said, a psychotherapist my whole adult life. I've finished graduate school at 24 and been a psychotherapist ever since, and was living in Austin, Texas with my family. I was in private practice, which means I was self-employed. I had my own little therapy business going. And for the most part, that meant I was earning a living for every hour of my time, right?
Yeah.
I'd show up at the office and I earned a living by seeing 20 to 30 clients a week. And
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I loved my job. I love my job. I love being a psychotherapist. And I've always been somebody who wants to do more than one thing at a time. So I've enjoyed teaching and training of my whole life since high school, really. I've really enjoyed always being kind of a teacher and an educator. So as I got more skilled and more competent in my particular field, it was a really natural thing to add to my work life to start doing teaching and training. And I first started doing that with the individuals who would have been like my clients. And then I moved into teaching other therapists as I really honed my area of expertise and really enjoy teaching and doing event planning. And so I did it. I started it because I love it. I started teaching because I love teaching and I wanted to do something more than just being in the therapy room all the time. And then my husband and I realized about 2 years ago that side of my career was going to be what offered us flexibility in our lives, flexibility that we had kind of previously thought because of my job we weren't going to have. I've been the primary income earner in our family, and my therapy practice really supported us. And you can't just pick up and move a in-person.
All of your clients.
Exactly. It just doesn't work that way. And for a long time, we were fine with that. We were like, Austin, Texas is a cool place. And here we are. And this is just our life. And then I think as our son started to get a little bit older, and Austin's not where we're from. We moved there 15 years ago, but it was never home per se.
Yeah.
And we just started to consider hey, wait a minute, maybe we could do other things. Maybe we aren't tied to this location, to this business model, to this lifestyle that we have.
Yeah.
And kind of as soon as we realized that, oh, hey, there's more options than we thought.
Yeah.
We started putting things into play and made that work for us.
Yeah. I love how in your messaging you said that you like realized I don't want to die here. Like, tell me more about
Yeah.
that. Like how that came, like,
Yeah.
it was just like an epiphany.
It was just like an epiphany. And I literally said it out loud to my husband. Like, we still kind of chuckle about it. And it was this thought of Austin, Texas is not where I want to die. Like, I don't want, why don't we consider making a move, and literally like a geographical move, but a lifestyle move.
Yes.
Why don't we just go ahead and start considering that now? Like, what are we waiting for?
Okay. So let's talk about that because you had built up a practice like for how long? Like
Yeah.
a decade?
Yeah. I mean, I had a really thriving private
Yeah.
practice. I had a waiting list that could sometimes extend like out like a year.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
had others. Yeah, it was big. I
Yeah.
was pretty, uh, it was known in the area for my specific area of expertise.
Okay. And what is that
So
expertise?
the
Just so
idea
we
of
know.
leaving my business and my colleagues and my clients. Sure. But I've always worked with kids. The psychotherapy lingo would be I work with kids who have histories of complex trauma. So I work with kids who have been adopted from foster care or adopted internationally or have had some sort of really significant traumatic experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's, I know so many people that are looking for those and they always have to wait on these long wait lists
Yeah,
because it's such a niche, but a
exactly.
useful, important thing. Okay, so let's go back. So you had this
Yeah.
dream. You were like, okay, I don't want to die here.
Yeah.
There's got to be something
Right.
else. I talk about this a lot, and I love this conversation. I love having it with other people that have been there. That sometimes I feel like we start climbing this mountain that we're like, when we get to the top, like it's going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be gorgeous. And all of a sudden we get to the top and we're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love this mountain. It's been great, but I want to be on that one over
Yes.
there. Like I'm in the right
Yeah.
valley. I'm just not on the right, I'm not in the right forest, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I'm not
Right.
that kind of lingo, but
Yeah.
like I just want to be on that one over there. So like, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't have even seen that mountain. I didn't even know that mountain exists until I climbed the top of this one. And I love that.
Right.
So when you got to that point, you're like, okay, I want to do this. I don't want to die here. What steps did you start
Hmm.
taking to like leave your practice that you've built up your baby, but at the
Yeah.
same time you're like, you know what? It's time for something else.
Yeah, it's time. It's time. Well, from a practical perspective, I had to get a lot more deliberate about focusing on my work that I could earn from anywhere.
Uh-huh.
So I had allowed that side of my practice to really grow very organically. So I never sought out speaking engagements or training or, I hadn't really emphasized growing that. I had just kind of let it do its own thing.
Right.
And I think there was almost this tipping point of like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a really viable business model. And if I nurtured it and got more deliberate about how I can earn money outside the psychotherapy office, I might be able to generate enough income that just from a practical perspective, we could afford to start over in a new city.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a practical thing I had to do. And then, of course, there's so much else that goes into packing up and leaving your life behind,
Yeah.
right? Just like you said, a life that we loved. And I think that's, in a way, almost a unique part of my story is that there was nothing wrong with our life. We weren't trying to escape anything or get
Yeah.
away from anything. We loved our life. We just
Yeah.
realized we were kind of ready for something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you also have talked I've heard you mention about
Hmm.
how during this process you had to lean on what was going well. Tell me more about that.
Yes. Yeah. So I had to get really clear about looking at what are the parts of my business outside the therapy office that are already generating income, but also growing my kind of expertise and voice
Yeah.
beyond Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
and look at what's the best use of my energy, what's the best use of my time, and what do I really love doing? Like, I'm not gonna trade a life I love for one that is less inspiring to me.
Right.
I needed it to at least equal how much I
Right.
loved doing therapy. And again, I've always just really liked doing lots of different things.
Yeah.
So I've done, like, I do regularly do online webinars, like short one-off little, very inexpensive webinars.
Yeah.
And I do extensive trainings for therapists that are a couple days long, so they're a bigger investment. And then I also do conference speaking. So events contact me, and
Yeah.
I started to notice, like, these are the things I love to do. And these are the things that are, again, like, kind of viable business models.
Yeah.
How can I get more deliberate about these pieces so that they can grow and grow and grow?
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about how you didn't want to leave something you loved for something that wasn't an equal love or better.
Right. Right.
But I think because I think we've both been through this, when you first left, it wasn't like it was like automatically, beautiful roses, like everything's working out. So let's talk about that hustle and hard work that had to go into
Yeah.
making the change.
Yeah. Well, there was definitely, and it's one of those things, like, when you're in the middle of a hurricane, you don't even realize how out of control the hurricane is.
Yeah.
And so I can say, looking back now, like, oh, I mean, so for about a year and a half, I just hustled. I mean, when you have a psychotherapy practice, you don't just close it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't just say to
We've
these
all seen What
clients,
About Bob? I mean, you
right,
can't just
that
close
doesn't work.
it.
Exactly. And so and you can't just, it's not as easy to scale back either. And so for a while, I was having to juggle what looked a lot like two full-time
Mm,
jobs, because I wasn't taking new clients. And so my practice was getting a little bit smaller, but not much,
yeah.
while at the same time really investing in this other income stream that I needed to grow, and I needed to grow fast so that we could, lean into it. So for a while, it was just like full speed ahead, hustle, like breakneck speed. And then we added into that, where are we going to move? What are we going to do? What are our priorities? Because we had this really unique opportunity to sort of pick and go really wherever we wanted, since I was
Yeah.
developing this online business. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
So then we added in, like, getting your house ready to go on the market, and selling a house and buying a house and all that good stuff too. So it was hard. It was really, really hard for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then everything that goes into closing a psychotherapy practice, right? Like, my beloved people who I just loved and adored, and they trusted me, and I'd been with some of these people for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so working towards ending that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
as you made the jump, what did you
hmm
see with the new path that kind of unfolded as you went through the process?
Well, we were really focused on less about, like, this new location and more on a new lifestyle. Austin, Texas is a wonderful, amazing place to live, and everyone else thinks so too.
Yeah.
And so it was really busy, really crowded, really, really expensive.
Okay.
And I wanted to work less. I wanted to spend less time in my commute. I wanted to spend more time with my family. I have an eighth grader now. So at the time he was a seventh grader, and I wanted to, I saw his launching on the horizon, and I just said, like, we've got to really overhaul this.
Yeah.
And so knowing that that was on the horizon, and that came true, and it came true instantly. I really had a pretty instantaneous lifestyle shift when I finally closed my practice and then ended up in this new state
Yeah.
of goodness. And so I just had to keep that, like, my eye on that end point the whole time, and just sort of take a leap of faith and trust that all the work that we've been doing was going to bring us to this place that we've been working so hard to get to, and that things were going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. So, with all the coronavirus stuff, I
Yeah.
think some people who don't have an entrepreneur mindset, I don't know if this has happened to you, but like, I know for us, people have been like, oh, like, even though like for me, I haven't been in a regular job for like over 5 years, and my husband is more
Yeah.
recent, but even like all
Yep.
the family members are like, so is your husband going to go back to his job? Are you going to go back to a regular job? And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? So how
Mhm.
do you ever think, oh, maybe I should have
Yeah.
stayed with my practice? Or like, are people asking you, oh, are you going to go back? Like, gonna go back to what's stable, what that's what
No,
the,
if
the
any,
world calls stable.
yeah. Yeah. If anything, I've been relieved that in the middle of all of this, I'm not also, seeing 20 to 25 clients a week,
Yeah.
because I'm deeply entrenched in the therapeutic community. Everyone I know is in the middle of figuring out how to be in their own crisis, how to support their clients who are in the middle of a huge client crisis, and transition to something that most people are very unfamiliar with, which is like a telehealth
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah.
And so truly, I've had a lot of nervousness. I mean, while I'm not seeing clients, and I plan to not see clients for at least the rest of this year, all I'm doing is teaching and training and mostly traveling.
Yeah.
So I've definitely had a very reasonable, like, this is a problem
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
And as the weeks have gone on, I've been able to kind of rest back into, I'm ready for this. I know how to pivot. I know how to pivot fast, and I know how to make a living online and serve people online.
Yeah.
Um, and there's going to come a point where we need every trauma therapist imaginable. And so that's my job, is to train up and help trauma therapists.
Yeah.
Um, so it's certainly been nerve-wracking. Like,
Yeah.
I've canceled a ton of events,
Yeah.
but
But
in
but
this
don't you?
exact moment, feeling
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like when people say that, I'm like, who other than Zoom and homeschool, people who make money off of homeschooling, like not a lot is like everybody is stressed. Like it's not like I'm gonna like go back to my
Exactly.
job that even in like I've talked to like my husband who left more recent than I did.
Yeah.
He's talking to
Yeah.
his colleagues and it's not like they're like, oh yeah, we're still great. Like nobody's
No,
great,
no, of course not.
you
No.
know?
Yeah.
And so but I love how you talked about like to me this is a big one. This is a huge one,
Yeah.
but it's for a
Yeah.
lot of the world. But as an entrepreneur, you're going to run up against things, but that doesn't mean you
Yeah.
turn around and run away and go back,
Right.
but you stay with your dreams. You stay and you still do. Now, don't get me
Absolutely.
wrong. It's kind of hard finding that medium, right? Of sticking with your dreams, but at the same time, like we talked about, getting to the top of one dream and realizing, oh no, this wasn't the real dream I wanted, and moving to the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
finding that line between, no, this was a terrible idea, you need to go to the next mountain, or going back and being like, I want to leave the valley altogether. This was way too hard. I'll just go back to the man, whatever,
Right. Well, I mean, my dream is I want to work for myself and be in charge of my own life.
Yeah.
And this crisis is tragic and doesn't change that dream for me at all. It might
Yeah.
change how I implement it. It might change exactly the way I do it,
Yeah.
without a doubt. But to continue to want, like, to be in charge of my own life and my own work hours, and that's
Yeah.
not changed.
Yeah. And so many people might say, well, you were your own boss. Well, yeah, but it was still controlled by other people's time, and you were still swapping your
Absolutely.
hours for dollars.
Right. Right.
So I think that is so awesome, because I hear that all the time. In fact, it's one of the
Yeah.
big reasons why we started this podcast, was so many
Yeah.
people being like, how do I make that jump from trading my
Yep.
time for money versus really going, because it's a big scary jump. It's a huge scary jump.
Yeah.
Okay, but now let's take advantage of the psychotherapist and get some free therapy as everybody's going through this coronavirus.
Yeah.
And whenever they hear this, it will still probably be something that we are thinking about, aware of, and even recovering from. So
Yes.
tell us, what
Yes.
are some of your guidance tips for everyone
Yeah.
going through this? What are some things that we, tools or something to keep us stable in a time of chaos?
Yeah. I absolutely believe the most important thing we can do and practice and maybe learn to do for the first time ever is figure out how we can be with two completely contradictory feelings and experiences at the same time.
Mm,
That I'm hearing a lot of people like kind of shame and criticize themselves for their feelings of grief or sadness or anger because they realize that they hold a lot of privilege and that they're feeling almost guilty about their own very valid experiences in all of this.
yeah.
And I think that the nature of this pandemic, which is something tragically terrible is happening, and for a lot of us, life is just sort of continuing to tick along,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm not going to the hospital to work, right? Like I don't personally know anybody at this time who's ill.
Yeah.
It's the sun is shining, like there's this terrible thing happening while also it's like, well, life is also kind of normal still.
Yeah.
And so
And
the
I
very
I
nature
might
of that,
even
like these
say,
two very different things.
yeah, and I almost feel guilty that life is actually kind of awesome right now. Like, I
And
feel guilty
that's
saying that, you know?
totally, and that's exactly my point, that a lot of people are feeling that way, feeling guilty for what's good. And what I think is going to be, again, my psychotherapist brain says the most important thing that's going to come out of this is that we're going to have people more practiced at being able to have two totally separate feelings at the same time, because that's actually a huge key component to like mental wellness is this, like things can be good and bad or hard and not hard, and to be kind of like mentally flexible is a
Yeah.
huge, it's probably one of the most important pieces of mental wellness. And
Interesting.
here we are in the middle of this huge dichotomy, and just like you said, a lot of us are having moments of like, ooh, I actually sort of like the way that this has forced my life to change, or it's, for me, it's forced me to be more creative in my business model, and I see a lot of benefits in
Yeah.
that. And um
I get to see my
and
kids
that's
every
okay, like
day,
I
and yeah.
exactly we're saving a ton of money by not going out to eat all the time, which has its own, like, oh my gosh, what a privileged thing to say in the first place.
Yeah.
And to be okay with both being true, that like I can have a lot of like grief, not only for how this is impacting people's personal lives, but how it's impacted mine, even though that the impact hasn't been devastating, but having to cancel events
Yeah.
or having to shift what I thought this summer was going to look like or vacations we were going to go on,
Yeah.
it sucks.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I can also hold a lot of like gratitude for what is good and not feel guilty about having gratitude for what is good, because we really need to actually have both,
Okay.
to have both kinds of feelings. I actually believe that's going to be really important for our like global recovery from
Okay.
this, is that the people who could have both grief and gratitude gave themselves permission to have both.
Oh, I really like that. And so not
Yeah.
having the guilt for
Yeah.
feeling both, but it's actually, maybe I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correct.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually healthy that I'm
Yes.
recognizing the chaos
Yeah.
and the just, just craziness and the
Yeah.
the impact of the chaos, but
Right.
also recognizing that. So it's okay. It's healthy to
Yeah.
have both.
It's as yeah, it's not only, I don't believe it's just healthy, I believe it's crucial for when we recover from this.
Interesting.
That if I want to have gratitude for my current experience, I do think it's important that we also stay aware of how devastating this is to people with
Yeah.
way less privilege. Like some people's lives have been destroyed economically. Some people's lives have been destroyed because their loved ones are dying alone. You know, our first responders and our healthcare workers. I think we can hold grief and sadness and even gratitude for all of them,
Yeah.
while also saying, okay, I have space to continue on with what I offer into the world.
Hmm.
And I think that we need to do both, have grief for what's terrible and gratitude for what isn't. And that's going to be crucial in our recovery. Yeah.
That's the very wise, my husband last night at dinner. It was getting a little crazy, a little chaotic and stir crazy. And the very wise analogy, he said, remember the movie Inside Out? I love that movie Inside Out to help like my kids really process things, and now they talk in those terms. But my husband was like, anger is starting to take the control panel and flames are starting to come out. But I'd like to invite joy back in, like he was trying to explain it to my kids. Okay to have both on the handles, but who's taking more control? So
that's funny.
So it's good to know that that's okay to recognize there are two people at the control panel, and that's okay. I love that.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's the answer to my next question. But let's kind of tie it back into the original why big huge leap in a career change, not like career change, but career changing your business model, huge. And so let's jump back to that. What's your advice to people who have been thinking, maybe I don't want my time controlled by everybody else? What would be your advice to you 5 years ago or whatever?
My advice to me 5 years ago would have been, even if I'm not entirely sure what I'm trying to build, just keep doing it. Because that's what allowed me to make such a huge pivot so quickly, is that I had been working at building this platform and building this voice that I had without necessarily a whole lot of direction to like why I was doing that. But I just kept doing it. And then to have, I don't know if confidence is exactly the right word. It's more like just it was just like a leap of faith. Guts to just say, like, I'm going to do this, and not in a foolish way. There was never a time where it was like, ooh, I think this is actually a really bad idea and we shouldn't do it. Like, we were aware of cues coming in, but just to have guts and to be like, this is going to be hard and it's the right thing for our family and we're just going to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Robyn, you've had such great stuff. Thank you for taking the time to come be with us today. Where can people follow up with you to check out all of the great stuff you do?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on my website. It's just Robyn Gobbel, my first and last name.com. You can find me on Facebook and you can find me on Instagram. Easy.
Perfect. Robyn with a Y and Gobbel with two B's. So thank you so much for being on with us today, Robyn.
Thank you. It's been fun.